Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of What's Hot with Sea of Tranquility. We've got a special show, a special release today, and my co-captain for this little venture, for this little review, is none other than Steven Reid from Scotland. Good day, my friend. Good evening. Because I always want to say good morning or good afternoon, and we're not on the same time zone. So.
I'll have good evening. You can have good afternoon. We'll cover all the bases, and that'll do well.
There you go. There you go. So we're here to talk about the brand new studio release double album from former Marillion lead vocalist and songwriter Fish. The title of the CD is
Weltschmerz, I believe.
Weltschmerz. Okay, I'm going to try it.
There we go. Weltschmerz.
Weltschmerz.
That's what it is.
So we got two copies. We got the double disc here, and Steven's got the double disc with the Blu-ray.
Yeah, double disc with the Blu-ray, which comes with the fancy, swanky book version, which is absolutely stunning.
So I'm not even going to bother to show this. You might as well just open that whole thing up because mine does not compare, obviously.
You could have the whole show on this. I'm a massive Mark Wilkinson fan, and him and his wife, Julie, have gone to town on this. I can open it anywhere and show you artwork that is just phenomenal. I've marked a couple of things I do like. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves and talk about the end before we talk about the start. But I've got to show this. Not that one, because that's just a black phrase. I've got to show that.
Oh, very nice. Wow. I like that.
Across there.
Yeah, very cool.
There you go. So we're going full circle here. The Jester is
to say that's a little nod to the past, right?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Very intentional, and they know what they're doing. So the DVD Blu-ray version, the Blu-ray disc, is very good on this. We're not even getting the music yet, but I'll talk up the fancy version that's got the extra content. You've got about an hour's worth of documentary with Fish talking about the album itself, the creation of the album, the long gestation period. It took about 5 years from the Weltschmerz idea to then actually come up with all of this. You've also got, I think it's about 20 minutes, 25 minutes with Mark Wilkinson and Fish separately, talking about the art and the creation. Lots of issues for the two guys along the way, because Fish fell unwell twice with sepsis in the build up to the album. Mark Wilkinson had to have an operation because he came in with cancer in the creation of all of this. So a lot of journey, a lot of story. So thankfully the bonus stuff on here is excellent, well worth a watch. You get the 4 promo videos, the making of the promo videos, and also some live footage as well from one of the shows that they did prior to the recording of the album, but with the new material on it. So really good, I have to say. So
and for this release, you basically have to order this directly from him. This is not, you're not going to find this on Amazon or whatever. So I ordered my double disc set directly from, is it still fishmusic dot? Geez, I can't even read this.
I think that's right. Yeah, it's from his main website, put it that way.
Yeah.
He's had a few over the years, to be honest, but this is just from his main website. So if you go on there, then you'll find all the different versions. And I do believe that there is just a digital version too. I'm old-fashioned, and it's physical for me, especially when the effort has gone in the way that it definitely has here. You know?
Yeah, I mean, even here, I mean, it's pretty spectacular. Not quite as glorious as Steven probably has all this in larger pages and what have you. But yeah, pretty cool, and a pretty good album. So apparently, yeah, look at that. I mean, you can't go wrong with that, right?
Yeah, it's stunning stuff, and it's all linked throughout. And I mean, there's lyrics for everything. There's an essay in here. I could talk all day just about the package. Let's talk about the music, Peter. Sorry.
So this apparently is his last album. He's long talked about retiring from the music business to go and do other things. I'm sure he's got other stuff he's working on that don't involve this anymore. And I will say, if you're going to go out with a bang.
Yep.
And though I wouldn't say this whole album is a bang, but it's really good. Kind of, you know what? If you've been following this guy throughout his career, I think you'll find lots of comfort in this album. Steven, in his amazing review on the website, www.seatranquility.org, talked a lot about, the poet calling it a day, and that's exactly what this comes across as. And maybe you want to get into a little bit more about the story behind the album, but a lot of textures and moods on this. You got some shorter, quirky songs. You got some really long epics. We've talked before, you and I, about how is Fish's solo career. You know exactly where I'm going with this. Was Fish's solo career considered prog or progressive rock? We generally say borderline to no. He kind of dips into a little bit here on this album, I think, right?
I would say so, yeah, definitely. But then I marked in here just the cast list that's involved in the album as well, so they give people an idea of the talent. You've got some recognizable Fish names on here. So you've got Steve Vantsis, who plays bass, but he's the main songwriter, the main music writer on the album, along with Robin Boult, who's played guitar on a lot of Fish's albums. But then you've got John Mitchell, who we know from Arena and It Bites and Lonely Robot and Kino and Shadowland and everything else that he Frost, everything else that he turns up on. So he plays quite a lot of guitars on here, has a little hand in some writing as well. You've got Liam Holmes, who plays keyboards in John Mitchell's band, Foz Patterson, Craig Blundell, who we've got in Stephen Wilson's band normally, and Steve Hackett's band as well these days, playing drums, along with Dave Stewart, who's a long-term Fish drummer, Liam Bradley, Doris Brendel, who's got a solo career but has started to do a lot of backing vocals for Fish live and in the studio, brings a very Pink Floyd feel in an awful lot of places, I feel, with the backing vocals on this, which is no bad thing. And then you've got David Jackson, who guests on saxophone and whistles on a couple of tracks, and he's obviously from Van der Graaf Generator. So the cast list is beyond stellar, it has to be said. So all you needed after that was a set of songs and a story, or stories, should I say. There's a theme, because Weltschmerz, as, and let's make sure that I get this absolutely right, it opens up with German noun, literal translation, world pain. So that's what Weltschmerz means. So it couldn't be any more timely, I suppose, or even though the idea and the process for all of this started 5 years ago.
Right.
So wonderful timing, bit of luck, Fish doing what Fish does anyway. It's a mixture of all of those things in those terms.
Yeah, and not a lot of songs on here. So we're looking at just under 90 minutes. All right, so two discs here, roughly 42 minutes and change per side. You've got what, 10 songs, 10 tracks.
5 per disc.
5 per disc. And like I said, you've got a mixture of some shorter songs with some longer songs. You know, you and I often talk.
I'm going to correct you a little bit there, Peter, because by shorter, the shortest one is 4 minutes 41.
Well, yeah, but I'm like, short meaning.
Yeah. So there's no pop songs on here. Put it that way.
No, and maybe if we're looking at like the last bunch of, I mean, you know, he's never been huge into. I mean, he does epics, right, from time to time. But his songs throughout his solo career have tended to be a little more compact. Yeah, I will say for the most part, these songs are a bit lengthy, and we have some big epic length tracks on here.
Absolutely.
Which, quite frankly, you could probably get this and immediately go to you want to listen to the whole thing through and through. But man, the epic tracks here are like pretty damn exceptional.
They are epic, it has to be said, yeah, absolutely. Rose of Damascus, which closes out disc 1, that's just
it's my favorite on the album.
It's just phenomenal, isn't it? It's just the textures and the mood and the story that runs through that, just captivating. Do you know, there's so much happening there. I listened to this album again, start to finish last night with headphones on, and the spoken word sections panning from side to side, and just the atmosphere that's built up and the patience to take you through a song that is nearly 16 minutes long, but without a wasted second, is really quite special. But like an awful lot of this album, in a positive way, for the first time in a long time, to me, he's, I think, almost knowingly nodding to a long time ago. There are sections in here that take me back to Clutching at Straws, a little bit of Misplaced Childhood. It doesn't sound like Marillion. I'm not going to pretend to anybody that it sounds like Marillion, but there's little bits of keyboard atmospheres in the background that just the hum. Doesn't sound like Mark Kelly playing Mini Moog. It's
right.
The atmosphere that's kind of built, and he only touches on it and hints on it and then moves on. But it feels an awful lot like certain sections of Vigil for me as well, which is something he hasn't done an awful lot of since then. But it feels like A Feast of Consequences, which is the most recent album prior to this too. I think it's a really clever balance, and I think it's interesting listening to the journey of somebody who knew for so long that this was going to be, if he sticks to it, and he seems really quite adamant that he will, but that this will be his final studio album. And I think that there's a lot of knowing nods to that. And as a big fan, I mean, I got a kick out of that, to be fair. So it added to the journey for me.
Yeah, I think he purposely tried to give a little bit nods, plenty of nods to his past, as well as keeping it current, right? Because it sounds like, you know, the majority of this album sounds like, you know, kind of a feel of the last couple albums. But you're right. I hear little bits of, you know, especially from a musical perspective, because from his vocals, he's still kind of subdued, more telling stories. This is not the angst-ridden Fish from 1984, right? I mean, that's like, those days are long gone. Or even the, you know, Fish dipped into a little bit of that in the early mid-90s, but he hasn't been that guy in a long time. So I think this is still the mature, soft-spoken Fish who's here to tell you a story. It's a lengthy story, but musically speaking, he's brought in a cast of characters that I think are really trying to tie up his whole career perfectly with a bow on top. And I dig that. I dig it because I think that musically speaking, there's a lot to love here. If you've been following this guy since Script for a Jester's Tear, or even before that, right, when they first got together, and kind of seen him throughout this whole journey, I think this is a stellar release. It's moody, really moody in spots. It is quite melodic. I wouldn't say anything on here is like big up-tempo rockin' stuff, but that's not really his thing anyway in recent years. But I think if you like atmospheric, moody, melodic, well thought and expressed rock music, shall we say prog, I don't know, you can't go wrong with this.
Yeah, I mean, the one that touches me deepest is Garden of Remembrance, and that's the song that opens disc 2.
Yeah.
And it's a very plaintive, lone piano, I think, which, if I remember correctly from what I've listened to in the last couple of days, it was John Mitchell who put that part together. And it's a love song, is the way that they refer to it themselves. But it's a very bittersweet love song. It's about dementia. It's about loss. It's about a person being there, but not being there. The video also is on this, and that too is beautifully put together, very thoughtful. And I found it very moving, I have to say. And Fish sheds a tear at the end of the video. And I've got a funny feeling that it is a real tear at the end of the video, and it's not just to make a poignant moment. He seems very touched by it because he's actually talking about his own parents. And that's quite deep. It's something that I can relate to. So I must admit it affected me in that way. And I just find it that the melody that runs through that song stays with me long after I've finished the album. It's not necessarily the song that I would say is the song that represents the album best, but I think it does show not how far he's come, because he's always been a tremendous songwriter and a tremendous lyric writer. But I think the honesty and the openness on this album maybe goes even beyond what we expect from him, and that's really quite something, because he's always giving you probably more than most songwriters do in that sense.
Yeah, well, you know, he's written quite a bit, semi-autobiographical to a T at times. A lot of songs and tales that tell about the fragility of the human spirit and, you know, human nature in general, right? So here, I think he's trying to bring together not so much stories about himself, so to speak, me, Derek Dick, right? But stories about life and what goes on with so many people in life and what they experience. And that particular song hits home, obviously, for a lot of us, like yourself. I've lost numerous family members to dementia and Alzheimer's over the years. It's a horrible disease. So I can relate to everything he says in that song. But I just think this is it's less about him and more about everyone.
I think that, and I've had the benefit of listening to the documentary, to be fair, so I've probably maybe picked up things that I wouldn't necessarily have just listened to the album. But I think you're spot on. I think that was the intention. And I think then latterly he's then looked back and realised how much of those big stories contain so much of him. So This Party's Over, which is about, you know, it's time to grow up, I suppose, really, for a guy that's 62, I think he is.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit late, to be fair, but you know, I've never been a grown up, so who am I to say? And that's about finally kind of suggesting that maybe the way to go is to have a bit of sobriety. And he's quite open and honest about that too. I mean, this is a guy that up until maybe even the last time I saw him on stage was still drinking out of a bottle of red wine on stage. Do you know? I don't know how on earth you keep that pace up, let's be honest.
Yeah.
But there's also things like, I think the grace of God touches on his journeys through the sepsis issues that he had. That's where that idea was grasped, was actually during that time. However, the story is much wider. The story is really about how fragile the world is. And the grace of God goes is all about everything that's happening, you know, from refugee crises to, let's not get too topical, but current events that are happening where you live and where I live, and various things like that. And then you've got Man with a Stick, which is another one for the headphones, that clickety-clack percussion, which I absolutely love, I have to say. That's one that is about life's journeys, and it starts off with men with sticks, from everything from drumsticks to, you know, riot batons, all the way through to his father with a walking stick at the end of the journey. So there's so much where he's commenting on life, and then so much at the end where he's talking about his own life. It's a really clever balance that he's struck, and I don't quite know how much he knew he was doing that at the time. Listening to him now, not very much, but I think he's cleverer than that, to be honest with you. So I think probably quite a lot at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And yeah, I've always loved his vocal style. And like I said, here, this is the older, mature Fish, but he still sounds, it's just a charm to his voice that I think I will always love, no matter what era we're talking about. And you know, the one song that I keep going back to, I think where his voice just really hits me on this album is Little Man, What Now?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just such a charming piece, right? And again, it's another one of the longer tracks on the album, but it's got this like melody, and his vocals are just like, it's just pure Fish. It's almost like you want to be sitting next to him and have him just sing it right to you, you know?
Yeah.
You know, you sharing a drink, and as someone who's met him on a couple of occasions, it's like, you know, he's a larger than life guy, and he's got there's that it factor about him. So I listen to a song like that and I'm like, I would love to just hang out with the guy. And do me a favor, sing me Little Man, What Now, please. I just want to hear it from your mouth, sitting right next to me. That's what, I don't know, you know, kind of crazy, but yeah, a really good album. It's a shame that this might be it for him, you know, but he's left behind quite a legacy, I think.
I think so too. And I think he's gone out with a real statement. I think he's gone out without pulling any punches. And I think that he'll probably go out on this album thinking that he's achieved exactly what he wanted to with it. And that's massively to his credit, because I think there was a temptation at a variety of stages to kind of, you know, I mean, he missed umpteen deadlines, as Fish is prone to be fair. If ever there's a guy that can kind of pull defeat from the jaws of victory, more through circumstance than his own actions, sometimes through his own actions, then it's Fish, to be fair. But a lot of the time, he does manage to come up smelling of roses. And this is one of those occasions, I think, where a run of, you know, cancelled gigs and issues with health. I mean, when I saw him the last time on the Clutching at Straws anniversary round that he did, there was meant to be songs from this album played that night. And that was one of the draws for me to go. I like to go and see Fish anyway, but that was one of the draws, thinking, you know, let's go and hear some classic material. Hence, we've got the White First Class. This is spot that night. But here's some new stuff too. Can you ask for more? And he said on stage at that stage that basically, well, he just hadn't written anything. So,
kind of hard to do it then, right? Yep.
Yeah. But now with the backstory, to be fair, there was an awful lot happening in his life at the time, and that kind of would explain why a lot of the ideas had started to formulate, but a lot of the motivation and inspiration to make them into songs wasn't quite there. And it seems to have been, as it is, I suppose, when you bare your soul, as much as he seems to, quite an arduous journey to get to the stage where we now have. I don't want to say it's a final studio album, because with Fish, with any musician, let's be honest, with any musician, the end of the road is quite often just a fork in the road, and something else happens. I can imagine another solo album coming. Let's be honest, I can, maybe in 5 or 10 years' time or whatever it may be. But he seems quite adamant, and I think that this would be a remarkable way to go out, to be fair.
Yeah, I agree. So in closing, because I know the question is going to come up from some of our viewers, now that this album is out and you guys have heard it, where does it rank in your ranking the Fish studio albums?
Well, and fun enough, I knew you would ask, so I did give it some
Because
thought.
I know it's going to get asked, and it gets asked every time when we've already done a ranking show and the band comes out with another new album. They're like, "Well, where does that rank? Where does that sit?" I'm like, it's hard for me to answer because I haven't, I have 3 weeks history with this. I mean, so it's kind of hard, but I will say I'm enjoying it quite a bit. Am I enjoying it more than the last couple? Maybe. I don't know. It's hard for me to say right now. I don't know.
Well, I've been fortunate because I got a pre-release stream to listen to. So I pre-ordered from long ago on the album. So I got it in the first week of release. Not on the day because they were snowed under with orders, which is a great thing. Snowed under for physical product. That'll do for me. So I've got a little bit of history there. I've got a couple of months with the album, and it's probably top 3 for me, is where I'm at this stage. I think we're talking about it in terms of, will it displace Sunset on Empire? Probably not. But then again, it's 84 minutes of music. I am familiar with it now, but I don't have the history with it yet. So it could grow or it could recede. Is it better than Vigil? That's a heck of a statement, it has to be said. So I can't say that at this stage either. Is it better than A Feast of Consequences? That's tough as well. So top 3, top 4, I do think it's an excellent collection, and I think it's definitely him near his peak. And that was as much as I needed from it in that sense. I just didn't want it to be, I like all of his albums. I like every single one of his studio albums, but I didn't want it to be one of the ones that I liked less, purely because you want your, and I will say the word, heroes to go out on a high. Yeah. And if this is going to be him and he's talking about 2 tours, one for the album and then a final farewell, so there's still probably quite a lot of the journey to go at this stage. But if this is the last hurrah from the studio, then I think he's done himself and his followers proud. So is that good? I think we are talking about near the top, but I can't quite give you a definitive yet.
Yeah. I would say folks watching, ask us in a year.
I think that's fair. I mean, there's a lot of music and a lot of atmosphere. And I'll be honest and say that because it deals with a lot of tough issues, that it's not an album that I can just say, well, do you know what? I need to go and listen to the new Fish album. I'll just pop it on now. It's definitely a journey, and it's definitely something that I think demands your attention if you really want to get to know it. First couple of listens, 2 or 3 songs really stood out, and I kind of thought, it didn't really need to be a double album. And I'm glad that I persevered before I even thought about putting any of my thoughts down, because I think I'd very quickly proved myself wrong on that, to be fair, because yes, there's highs and lows, as there is on any album, but the lows are quite high. Put it that way.
I agree. So there you have it, everybody. Like I said, please go onto our website, www.seatranquility.org, to read Steven's full review. It's basically a track-by-track analysis. It's a really, really well-written review that tells you the whole story of this album. And if you haven't heard enough from it here from us, from our mouths, the review is fantastic. So I actually have gone back to his review numerous times to kind of help my journey through this album. And I think you did a fantastic job on it. So there we have it. Weltschmerz. Did I say it right?
Weltschmerz.
Weltschmerz.
Apologies.
There's the L in there. That's screwing me up. Weltschmerz.
Yeah. He says it very much as almost 2 words. Weltschmerz. Which I suppose if it's world pain, then that would make sense.
That's really tough to say for an Italian from New York. Let me just.
Well, I'm glad I listened to him say it before I came on tonight, because I was miles away before that. So
there you go. All right, everybody, that's it from us here today. Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. For Steven Reid, I am Pete Pardo. We'll be seeing Steven back on the show relatively soon. I got an idea for him that I'm going to throw him once we go off air. So stay tuned. What else? Tonight, if you guys are watching this in the next hour or so, tonight at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Guitar Hack YouTube channel, Myself and Martin Popoff will be guesting once again. We're going to run down our 10 favorite Judas Priest albums. So that's coming up tonight. And then Friday morning, Martin Popoff and I will be ranking the studio albums of XTC. So that's coming up this Friday. And then, speaking of Marillion, I'm going to be talking to Mark Kelly from Marillion on Sunday, so you don't want to miss that. So,
oh, you never told me that.
I haven't told anybody that. he's got a new project out or coming out.
Yep.
Talk about and we'll catch up on all sorts of things with him. So that's pretty cool. So that's happening as well. So everybody take care, and we'll see you real soon. Thanks for watching, and make sure you go out and check out the new Fish CD. All right, it's quite good. Have a good one.